Madam President,
Senator from Oklahoma.
first of all, in spite of what some people might think, I have the highest regard for the senator from Rhode Island. It's very interesting that climate is changing, and climate has always changed. Every evidence out there, every historic evidence, every scriptural evidence tells us over and over again that climate is changing. It always has been changing, always will change. And the good news is that the world is not coming to an end because of climate change, because climate is always changing. And so those people who believe that the world's coming to an end because of anthropogenic gases, the good news is it's not, and I'm happy to share that good news with you. Now, I'm here, though, to speak about some other good news, and that is we have an opportunity with a vote that's coming up. I don't refer to the what people call the budget vote or the budget agreement. I call it a defense agreement. And I think everybody knows where I stand on this. This is a vote that's going to have to be coming up before too long. And there's a unique group of people in the United States Senate who knows the reason that we have to pass the defense budget. And those are the members of the Defense Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee. It happens that I chair that committee and that we have done really great work. We went through a period of 8 years where we had, and first let me make a unanimous consent request before I forget to do this, Madam Chairman. That is, I ask unanimous consent that I be recognized as if in morning business for such time as I shall consume.
Without objection. Without objection.
Thank you. So we have a situation where we went through a period of time, an 8-year period of time, when our military was somewhat devastated, and I want to share some of the specifics on that because it is a serious thing. We're going to be voting on the defense budget agreement, and I've already stated where I stand on the thing. And I'm here today to outline why the budget agreement is necessary for our national defense. Now, with this defense budget agreement, we'll be able to focus on the Senate Armed Services' top priorities. That's fixing on-base privatization, military housing. Remember, this happened about 6 months ago. We discovered all of a sudden that we were not doing a good job on our privatized housing. Hey, I have to admit I'm part of the responsibility of that because I was around here when we decided to do privatize the housing. And it worked for a while. And I think after a period of time, people got a little careless, got a little slack. Some of the contractors that made that commitment got a little bit greedy. And consequently, this came from a person in Tinker Air Force Base who was a spouse of a military person and how bad the conditions were. So when I first heard this, I thought they were just bad conditions in my state of Oklahoma, but they weren't. They were all over the nation. So that's one of the, we fixed that thing. We fixed it with our defense authorization bill. We have a lot of provisions in there, and we are now modernizing our military housing in a way that's going to be good for all of our spouses and others that are forced to live there. Modernizing our military and giving our troops a well-deserved pay raise. That's something that's going to, if for some reason, our defense budget agreement were to go down in flames and not be passed, they wouldn't get that. They wouldn't get that, the pay raise. And they haven't had a pay raise in a long time. This is going to be the largest pay raise for our military people in the last 10 years. It's a good thing. By the way, people are always talking about how can we be so concerned about building our military when we have China and Russia who have passed us up in many areas, and they spend just a fraction of the amount. And the reason is very simple, and that is that China and Russia, those are countries where they don't have to do anything for their soldiers. We take care of ours. We try to provide good housing. We provide the types of things that our all-volunteer force can be very proud and are very proud. And so that's something that we have to incur. The largest single expenditure that we have in military is end strength. That is the people out there. And now, communist countries, China, Russia, they don't have to worry about that because they just said, here's the gun, go out and kill somebody. And so we don't have that luxury, and we wouldn't do that if we wanted to. So if we don't pass this budget bill, the effects of the military would be devastating. Let me just share a couple of things that would happen. We would force the Department of Defense to operate under a continuing resolution, which shortchanged our troops and wastes taxpayer dollars. We all know that. We would face destructive, haphazard cuts and sequestration. What is it we hear on our committee? The occupier of the chair right now is fully familiar. She's one of the most loyal members of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and she remembers that when we have posture hearings, we have posture hearings for about 6 months at the beginning of every year. And we have every one of the people. We're talking about the leaders of the various branches of the military, General Votel, General Thomas Waldhauser, General Craig Fowler, Admiral Phil Davidson. All of these people come in, and what do they tell us? They tell us that we're going to have to do, if we don't actually start funding our military again, we're going to have sequestration. Look, if we vote for this thing and we pass it, we will end sequestration problems and threats forever. It's not going to happen again. What else do they come and tell us? They say about a CR, continuing resolution. That would be an absolute disaster. Now, a lot of people in this body don't know that, but every member of the Senate Armed Services Committee does know this, because they were there when all of these people come in for 16 leaders come in for posture hearings each year. And we know the problems that we're having and the problems that we're confronted with. So we would be faced with cuts and sequestration. We would have our national, this document right here is the assessment and recommendation of the National Defense Strategy Commission. Here it is right here. This is our blueprint of what we're doing to save America and to put us back on top in all these areas where we're deficient. And that's something that but if for some reason we didn't pass this defense budget agreement, then we would not be able to continue implementation of the National Defense Strategy. And we all know that. Certainly, we don't all know that, but the Senate members of the Senate Armed Services Committee do know that. So that's what could happen. But what would this mean? The members of the Armed Services Committee know what it means, but for everybody else, the deficit budget deal would end the threat for sequestration forever. You don't need me to tell you that sequestration would be devastating. General Milley just confirmed to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said the levels of funding caused by sequestration would place America at great risk. And we remember, unfortunately, Heather Wilson, the former Air Force Secretary, she was having to leave and had to leave her position. She said the cuts would be absolutely devastating in scope and scale. If we were hit by sequestration, there would be across-the-board cut of $71 billion to the defense programs that would halt our progress on Space Command and developing crucial capabilities like hypersonic weapons and artificial intelligence. Those are two areas we've actually been passed up by both Russia and China. Just yesterday, the DARPA announced that they have completed a successful design review of hypersonics weapons programs. Now, that's a good first step. I'm really glad, because we were way ahead of them back before the last administration came into office. And then all of a sudden, over that period of time, we got behind. So meanwhile, China and Russia are already testing their hypersonic weapons. They're ahead of us. So we're just trying to catch up. And that's what this budget vote's all about. The 2020 NDAA invests hypersonic weapons, but we can't move forward if we are hit by sequestration. it would mean it would set us even further behind. And by the way, the hypersonics that we are talking about, that's the state of the art. That's a new thing. That's a weaponry that moves at 5 times the speed of sound. And here we are allowing our I don't want to characterize China and Russia as enemies. They're not enemies, but they're certainly on the other side, and we want people are in shock when they find out that they have something that we don't have. And we've got to be competitive with them, and we are going to be if we pass this defense budget vote that we're going to have before us. So another example, in our NDAA, we passed overwhelmingly just last month and authorized a 3.1% pay raise, an increase for our troops. They deserve that pay raise, and under sequestration, that pay raise is at risk. The ability for basing facilities to receive the next generation of aircraft is also at risk. And if your state is like my state, if your state is slated to house the F-35 or the TX trainer or the KC-46, the KC-46 is a system that is going to replace the KC-135 that's been in place now for over 50 years. And it's 50 years old. That's a system, and if you are going to have one of these systems in your state, you may not get them because of this deal. Without the budget vote that is going to take place, we wouldn't be able to move forward with our plans, and we'd be hit by sequestration. It could all be over. And I'm talking about systems like the F-35. We talk about that every day. The TX trainer. We've had the trainers in existence now for some 50 years, and the KC-46, the same thing. So anyway, that's what would happen if for some reason we vote against and don't pass the defense bill that we're going to be asked to vote on probably tomorrow. Now, we've also made plans to continue increasing our end strength by 17,000 troops from the Obama era, and our current goal, and without this defense budget deal, that wouldn't be possible. I think we all know it. Now, maybe we don't all know it in this chamber, but every member of the Authorization Committee, the Defense Authorization Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, they all know because they've been told over and over again. And that's why it's so important that they be very responsible in their vote. I mean, it'd be kind of hard to say that you're working for the defense of our nation and then turn around and vote to gut their funding. Now, we've made remarkable gains in readiness over the past couple of years, thanks to President Trump's leadership and the greater budgetary stability. Just one example, at the end of the Obama administration, only 5% of our brigade combat teams were ready to what they call fight tonight. Only 5%. Now, we've made a huge improvement. That's up to 50% now after just 2 years of this administration. But we got a lot more to do. We would be, all the improvements we've made in fiscal years 18 and 19 would be at risk if we were not be able to go forward and pass our Defense Budget Act that we're going to be asked to defend, to support. Sequestration would undo what we've done and take us back where we were before. We'll be abandoning our troops right where we said that we were there for them. A continuing resolution means funding will go to the wrong places, places that were important last year but don't need to be funded this year. That's just wasteful. We all understand that. But a continuing resolution would be especially devastating for the military. And every one of these military people that I just was reading that come in for their annual meeting, they all said the same thing. It'd be devastating if we had to go into a continuing resolution. We'd be forced to do programs that otherwise we would not be doing. So General Dunford said it himself. He said the fact that we have routinely not had a budget at the beginning of the year has delayed new starts. It's been incredibly inefficient in how we prioritize and allocate resources throughout the year. That was General Dunford. A continuing resolution means that our military will lose key planning ability, David Norquist, nominated to be the Deputy Secretary of Defense, gave a great example to the Senate Armed Services Committee last week. He said, let's say a unit is planning right now for some training in October, but we are operating under a continuing resolution. At that time, they'll cancel training because they don't know how much money that they would be getting in order to accomplish that. We may eventually get them more money, but in the meantime, we will have lost a month in the process. With sequestration off the table and with a stable 2-year budget deal in place, the Department of Defense can move forward with what's really important, implementing the National Defense Strategy. This is what the committee has been focusing on all year. We're facing a different, more dangerous world than ever were 10 years ago. Before I look back wistfully, I've said this many times, I look back wistfully at the days of the Cold War. We had 2 superpowers. We knew what they had. They knew what we had. Mutual assured destruction meant something. It doesn't mean anything anymore. You have countries that are run by people that are mentally deficient, have the capability of blowing up one of our American cities. It's a scary world out there. That's what we're doing. That's why it's so important that we pass this budget, because our defense is dependent on it. Now, everybody knows this, but the members of the Armed Services Committee, they do know it. We're falling behind China and Russia as they continue to build their militaries. We're seeing persistent threats from North Korea, from Iran, from the terrorist groups, and we no longer have the best of everything. And most people don't understand that. Of course, the members of our committee do understand that. We have set clear priorities, and now we need to fund them. The future of our nation is at stake. This is what it'll take to regain the qualitative and quantitative advantages that we have lost. I would have liked to have seen even more funding provided to this. The National Defense Strategy Commission, by the way, they set up a system that they can use, and that system is we should be putting it together between a 3% and a 5% increase over inflation. But we have not done it, and we have not done it with even the budget that we're working on now. The National Defense Strategy Commission, which is nonpartisan, has said 3% to 5% growth. That's what's needed, and that's what we did not do. But at the end of the day, I'm willing to take this smaller deal to increase and give our military what it needs, predictability. It's also more than what the House passed in their defense authorization bill, which was dangerously low. Every member of the Armed Services Committee should vote for this defense budget because they know everything we've been talking about. They know that we are outranged and outgunned in artillery. They know that we are at a disadvantage in air defense, have only 2 active duty battalions. We have the nuclear triad modernization has not been taking place. It is now. We aren't there. China and Russia are. So anyway, what I'm trying to impress upon is that those individuals that are members of the committee are fully aware of the problems that we've had. They remember that under the Obama administration, at the end of the Obama administration, our Air Force was short 2,000 pilots. 1,500 of them were fighter pilots. Only a third of our brigade combat teams, a fourth of our aviation brigades, half of our divisions were ready. 60% of our F-18s weren't flyable. And this is what we have corrected, and we're in the process of correcting, and it's all depending upon the passage of this budget. So I would only say that those individuals who are on the committee, that I can't imagine that any of them would not be supporting this defense budget when it comes up. And I would hope that we don't have members of our committee who are anticipating doing things such as field hearings back in their state or amendments to go as we put our defense authorization bill through the next steps, because now is when our defense system needs to have this budget passed. With that, I will yield the floor.